Welcome to the Lawless Astrology channel. I am excited today because I'm going to have joining me Suzanne Sanders. She is an astrologer. She does human design. She's a fantastic astrologer. She actually studied with Anne Ortley. That's how I met her, was in our mentorship program. And she's NCGR certified. So I've gotten a reading from her. I've gotten a human design / astrology reading from her, and it was fantastic. So I'm going to put all of her information below if you are interested in getting a reading from her. She also has a human design YouTube channel and an astrology YouTube channel. So I'm going to link to those as well. So what we're going to be talking about today is about the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So this might be a little bit more technical than I usually go into, but you're going to learn so much because she really breaks it down, and she has a really great presentation. And it's amazing how much the Jupiter and Saturn cycle impacts what happens in the world around us and in our own lives. So welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Dabney. I just want to say I'm so impressed by you and the growth of your channel so quickly. You just are a powerhouse of an astrologer and a presenter, and I'm really grateful to be on your show today. So thank you.
She's so nice. So it was funny because when I launched my channel, we were in this mentorship, and I called her. I'm like, no one's watching my channel. She's like, could you just calm down? Like, people will catch on eventually. And so then she said, like, the next time she looked, it was after I went on Susan Lynn's channel for the first time, and I'd had over 1,000 subscribers. She's like, what happened? So yeah, so I just am always whining about something. So
it has to do with her human design. I knew it instinctively. Should just listen to her, what gave her energy. She was just going to do a lot better. And I knew, like, as soon as I turned around, I saw proof of that. So it was a really great learning experience for me too. So great. I'd love to share my screen. I have a presentation for you guys. I think it's super helpful to understand the cycles, the bigger cycles, to better understand how we fit into those cycles. I'm going to talk about it first from kind of the orbital cycle of Jupiter and Saturn, because I think it's really important to understand this part. And I wanted to just say, that Jupiter is in our solar system, the largest planet, and it's also the oldest planet in our solar system. And some people have conjectured that it was once part of the sun as an unequal partner in a binary star system. And it moves pretty quickly after these personal planets, which you'll see, the Mercury, Venus, and then we're in between Venus and Mars. That really impacts us personally. But once we go out to Jupiter, that's kind of more of the social environment. And it takes a pretty quick turnaround from the sun compared to the other outer planets. It only takes 12 years, but it also takes 1 year to transit an astrological sign. So it's kind of a speedier before Saturn. Saturn takes 29 years, and it takes a whole 2.5 years per sign to go through an astrological sign. And for every Saturn cycle, there's approximately 2.5 Jupiter cycles. So here we are, we're going out into the collective and learning, expanding our awareness much quicker than, Saturn's cycle, which is kind of behind Jupiter. And Saturn is really the last visible planet in our solar system. And it's really considered, when you understand it astronomically, you can understand why it's labeled as this protector, or the Saturn is basically keeping all of the asteroid material away from the inner planets, or protecting us in a way. So it's adding this boundary, this barrier from all of the debris that could come in and pretty much destroy us on the Earth. So it's got they say the pull of Saturn's gravity has helped shape the fate of our solar system. It may have helped violently hurl Neptune and Uranus outward. And a 2017 study suggests that Saturn, more so than Jupiter, steers dangerous asteroids away from the Earth. So even though it's smaller, it is that kind of boundary that keeps us protected.
Can I
And so
interrupt, Suzanne, real quick?
yeah, yeah.
So I think that's really interesting to note because Saturn, for those who don't know, Saturn is considered one of the malefic planets. So it's
Yes.
something that, we are always, thinking of Saturn like a Saturn transit, like, oh no, because it's responsibility and it's hard work. And sometimes it can bring, challenges. Whereas Jupiter is the planet of luck and benevolence. It's a benefic planet. And so to hear that like Saturn's kind of the one doing all the hard work of protecting us is kind of a nice nice take on it that I had not heard. And the other thing I want to just kind of break down for people when we talk about a cycle, Jupiter and Saturn cycle, I just want to kind of make sure people understand what we mean by that. And what that is the interaction between Jupiter and Saturn, where they're having an opposition, where they're opposing one another, or where they're having a square, or whether they're having a conjunction. These are all cyclical trines. It's cyclical, and each one kind of portends something that we're dealing with in the society or our social environment. So
yeah, and I'm going to get to that actually. So I'll talk about that a lot more. It will make more sense.
Awesome.
But I wanted to kind of review it from how it operates in our solar system. I have one more illustration about this, and then just talk about the symbolism behind this, and then we'll go into the cycles.
I love that graphic though, because it really does give you scale and helps you understand where the different planetary and planets are in our solar system, which we don't get to see that often. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's very helpful to understand this from the solar system perspective, and then also the mythological perspective, because it brings kind of the depth of understanding about how the people before us, we have such centuries and centuries of data on astrological data, and how astrologers before us really came to understand the archetypes. Absolutely. So here, I just wanted to talk about what you call Jupiter's magnetosphere and how it operates, because it's sort of how it informs also this growth and expansion, and how Saturn's orbit kind of keeps us protected, and aligns us with how do we pragmatically. We started to talk about how do we put in pragmatic structures, and what's life sustaining, and really pragmatic to better understand how to build things for the future. And so Jupiter's magnetosphere right here, it's huge, and it reaches all the way to Saturn's orbit. And it creates this huge disk, which is countered by the solar winds on the sun side of the planet, but elongates in an enormous magnetotail on the other side, which stretches as far as Saturn. And that is as far from Jupiter as Jupiter is from the sun. So it's huge. It has this huge power. And then it describes this, you see this arrow that comes all the way down to the Earth. It describes this, I love this description. It's like the magnetic axis of this field is 10% off from the planet's rotation axis. So it flops up and down like a broad-brimmed summer hat in a rippling wind, and casts off electrons and ions, which fall through space, reaching the atmosphere of our Earth. So we're actually impacted by Jupiter's, electrons that are coming into our atmosphere and contributing to sort of what's happening on the Earth, if you think about that. And then Saturn's kind of like in the background, kind of protecting and allowing. It's almost actually assisting, this flow off of Jupiter to go to the Earth, but it's also containing it in a way, so that it doesn't get we don't go kind of outbound and expand outside of the protection of Saturn's orbit as well. So I thought that was really interesting. And get this, mysterious spokes have been seen in Saturn's rings. They conjecture that it's electrically charged sheets of dust-sized particles created by small meteors impacting the rings, or by electron beams from the planet's lightnings. So to me, it invokes this kind of static electricity that acts as a shielding agent, keeping the inner core of Saturn protected, because Saturn is actually weightless, but it holds tremendous power, and it's assisting the deterrence of harmful debris moving past the planet toward the inner planets. So I just love that understanding of how Jupiter and Saturn work together in our wider universe. Okay, so we want to talk about the Jupiter and Saturn cycles. So Jupiter is considered the planet of demonstrating expansion and growth, like we talk about. It's about faith to leave home and explore, to learn about others, to explore different cultures and ways of living. It's about experiencing something different from ourselves. And Saturn is about boundaries. It's the container for our expansion. It's where we bring pragmatic reality and structure to the growth we've just experienced from a Jupiter transit. And it's also about the equal and opposite reaction, and often contraction to the unbounded growth. So we want to think about this as Saturn is normalizing or making something permanent based on the growth that we've experienced with Jupiter. And I wanted to talk about this as related to our experience of the political environment. And I want to talk about this from an objective point of view, and not from what's right and what's wrong. But I think people who have this idea of traditional marriage they had a really strong reaction to gay marriage rights, because, in their minds, they're like, well, especially when we talk about the propagation of our species and extinction and all of that, people start to fear, well, if gay people get married and we stop having marriages of man and woman who actually can propagate the earth, then it's going to lead us further into an extinction point. So do we want to normalize that? And I think that's the broader kind of understanding of why people fear this. And then people in power use this fear regarding transgender people, because that furthers, like, well, where do we draw the line? We've got people who can't produce children naturally. So, and that, whether that's right or wrong, or whether that's due to other things, and whether it's a choice or not, is just another separate issue. But it's like, where do we draw the line if we want to keep propagating the earth, and if we want people to keep having children, and we want family structures? If people are experimenting with their gender, if they're marrying people, then where do we draw the line? And I think the political people in power use that type of reasoning to stoke fears about these issues, I think. And so we're seeing that in Jupiter and Saturn. So I wonder if what you have, I know Dabney, we talk about these things and we have definite points of view. Dabney, do you have anything to say about that description of the Saturnian response to the things that we're trying to do from an expansion point of view?
I haven't really thought about it. So I think that it's definitely good food for thought. Saturn, Jupiter, there is always this interesting dance where there's a benevolence with Jupiter where, you can kind of say, oh, that's the bleeding heart liberal, big deficits, where Saturn, we want to, rein it in. We want to, focus on big business and things like that. But I think then there's other sides to that as well, like being responsible versus just being for the wealthy. So they kind of do a dance where they can, I wouldn't say one is really one party is Jupiter and the other party is Saturn. I think that they both embody different parts of, they each own a piece of the high side and each own a piece of the shadow, is what I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's important, from my perspective, is because we've been in such a polarized environment, to try to understand the other's position, because it helps us understand how to talk to each other, and how do we really approach the real fears that are going on in the environment rather than these bogeymen that people start to introduce into the conversation. But I wanted to talk about Jupiter and Saturn as far as the cycles. Like Dabney teased, we've got the conjunction. Think about it as a moon cycle. Planets also have cycles to each other. So, we've got the conjunction here, this new cycle, which is seeding something new. And it's putting something into the environment that has just, we're just very new seeding, and there's something new that we need to go toward. And then what they call here is, they call it this an out square, which is a 90-degree angle, but I call it the opening square. The seed is sprouted, but now has to face climactic challenges. And then the opposition, the plant has reached maturity and can be harvested at this time. And then the out square, they call it, or is that the in square that they call it? It's the in square, they call it. I call it a closing square. The conditions become inappropriate for the plant's continued existence, and then you seed a new cycle. And I think beyond that, it's very interesting because Jupiter and Saturn cycles happen for 20 years in one specific sign. But beyond that, there's a 200-year cycle. And we have just entered a new cycle as far as the elements. They go through different elements. And we've been in an Earth cycle, like Pluto was in Capricorn, and now we're going into, we just went into in 2020, a permanent air cycle of Jupiter and Saturn, which we haven't had in quite some time because, they go through the elements. So, there's fire and water, and then we're in Earth. We had a little teaser back in the 1980s, which really seeded this time, this technological time. It was the time of the personal computer. And all of these things were seeded during this teasing of the cycle. It was in Libra. And then we went through the last Earth cycle in 2000, which was in Taurus. So that was a fixed sign. Libra was about relationships. That's when HIV first happened. And it's when it was seeded, this marriage idea, is it between a man and a woman, or is it okay to be a gay couple, and the HIV crisis at that time, and all of the things that were in the environment of treating these people like lepers, basically to die. We took a very long time to really come around to say, no, this is not somebody, we can't leave our fellow human beings out to die. And why? Because we don't agree with their rights to exist because of their preference, their sexual preferences. So that really seeded the time of gay marriage as well. And then also around this idea that we're understanding now, which is about this new cycle of air that we're going into in a very real way, with planet Pluto now going into Aquarius. And I know you talked about that recently, and that was a really great video, Dabney, about Pluto going into Aquarius. And so this is also supporting that idea of going into air from Earth. So the alignment speaks to new cycles of government, new faiths, and new ideologies. Jupiter searches for meaning, and Saturn makes it a reality. Are we cautious or optimistic? Do we create laws that constrict or support? Do we need new philosophies or ideologies to help us understand the world? Jupiter and Saturn speak to the greater societal ebb and flow. So, and then, there's this idea of triplicities, and that's what we've gone from Libra, and then now we're going to Aquarius, and then there's Gemini. So, Libra is all about relationships and balance, and then you have to understand how connection and harmony is built within Gemini's energy of exchange and movement, or Aquarius's needs to create systems and networks. So, we saw that, like I said, that conjunction in Libra in the 1980s. And now we're, that seeded this time when we're going into AI and new technologies, because during that time there was a seeding of the personal computer. So I think that's very interesting to talk about as we're as we've gone into this new cycle, and we're just experiencing the first opening square to that cycle that happened with the pandemic, which kind of forced us to be more networked online. And this is when the pandemic had started. It was in early 2020, but the actual square happened in later 2020. And you see in the 10th house, Jupiter and Saturn is seeding this moment in zero Aquarius, and it's with Pluto. And this is what they call the Great Mutation, and this is what started the new air cycle. But I wanted to read something from Reinhold Eberton, describes the combination of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto as violent changes, separation, and restriction. So what happened with COVID, as we saw, was this, forcing us to hunker down in our homes, and we couldn't go out. And so I don't know if you have Dabney, I know you have children, and he's about the same age as my child. And that was a real starting of him being online, and the battle of that with him, because there was always a battle, but it was much more extreme because he had to go to school online. So they got used to the online, kind of established that connection during that time, right?
Oh yeah, that's when collectively parents lost the battle against screen time.
Right.
Because and also that was the only way they could have any social interaction with their friends. And now all their social interactions, like we're always trying to say, "Hey, you want to see if your friend can come over?" But that they do it all online now. Like, they all
Exactly.
hang out
Even
online.
play together in person online. So it's like, what do you do? And I just wanted you to notice that here, this conjunction is squaring the AC-IC axis. In astrology, the angles are very important. And this is the sign, Taurus was the 2000 cycle. So we're at a crossroads. And we're saying, okay, this is the moment that we're going knee deep, head first into this new air age. And we've got this crossroads right now of the last age. And zero Aquarius is the Sabian symbol for that is an old Adobe mission in California. It's building structures of survival within your group. So this survival that we're trying to figure out for us, because the population is growing. There's pandemics that are happening, and we need to figure out how to build something pragmatically for our survival. Now, whether that's happening now or not, but we are experiencing the first opening square of what's been happening. But during this time, as you understood, the Trump got booted, and then we had Biden come in, because we were like, oh my God, we weren't ready for this change, and it's really chaotic, I think, and we want somebody that's going to lead us a little bit more steadily. But what happened, I want to point out that there's the 17 degrees of Capricorn again at the midheaven. And then, and so it's really interesting. In the second house, we have the North Node going toward the 19th degree of Gemini again. And in this, the second house is the stock market. In mundane astrology, it's the financial institutions. And I think a lot of people after, during this time start to rally around Trump a lot more, because there were some mechanisms that were happening behind the scenes. We've got this, Mars Libra axis in the 12th house will see this 14 degrees of Pisces come in as a pattern in later charts in the opening squares. But there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And the pandemic is really a 12th house thing going on at the same time. So the second hit of the opening square, it actually happens, and we might not be I know that this video might come out afterwards, and we might see very specifically what happens during this very specific hit. But it doesn't just happen on a day. So we're already seeing kind of the results of the second square when we see Trump in the way that he's picking his cabinet members, and also the CEO that's just gotten shot. You know, there was something that was witnessed in the collective and the collective environment that was saying, hey, well, there was a lot of discussion about this, about why people were so being so callous to not care about the CEO's murder. But, you know, what they call the trickle-down effect, I call it the callous trickle-down effect, basically. Because, you know, you're seeing this from the leadership. Now, money doesn't always trickle down, but callousness sure does. You know, the ways that you lead sure does, because that impacts everything else. And we're also seeing, oh, there's real implications to all of the things being spread on the internet. You know, there's all of this discussion about UFOs and drones, and nobody knows what's real and what's not real. And even our leadership is not telling us what's true or what's not true. And so we've got Jupiter hidden in this 12th house, and we've got Saturn right on the midheaven, and that 14th degree you see was in the cusp of the 12th house. So we're bringing the 12th house to the midheaven for everybody to look at, you know, what's been hidden. And there's real implications about corporate greed and corporate callousness and what's happening. And I think people are starting to wake up to that there's real ramifications to that. Now, whether that's going to be helpful for us or not is very up for us to see. But I also wanted to point out a couple of things that are happening in this chart before I move into the last and final square hit, which is, see, Mars is representative of war in the mundane world, and it's in the second house, and that's, you know, really about trade and our financial institutions. And this specifically, the Sabian for this 2-degree Mars, or the 3-degree Mars, is understanding that small events have widespread implications. It's an epidemic of the mumps. So really understanding that any small move is going to impact things. And I think there's a real understanding of what do we need, and it's opposing Pluto here, which is what are the structures that we need for our survival. And we're having these discussions right now. Are the things that we're going to implement with Trump's leadership actually going to help or not, with the tariffs and all of the things that he's threatening? Are they going to help, or are they actually going to hurt the economy more? And so some of these things are about, really about moving forward. And there's some illusion going on about what's going to really help versus what's not going to help. Very much in the 10th house, Neptune sits here at the 27th degree. There's a lot of illusion going on and hidden things that are happening. And what is the ramifications of what's been happening from, the internet and the spread of misinformation, and then the conversation about polio, and all of the things that have been stoked, these fears about vaccinations. Well, they have impacts. People start giving their kids, vaccinations that have helped us for years and centuries. Now, whether they shouldn't be questioned, some of the new ones, still it has impact. So we're at the Jupiter and Saturn final square. And this is very interesting because it happens the day after Trump's birthday. And if we had really looked, or if I had really looked at these these cycles, I might have, because I was really wanting, I saw some really good arguments for Trump's win, but I didn't want to see it.
So I don't remember Trump's birthdays. Is he in May or is it early
June.
June?
It's like it's in June. Yeah. And so it's right after his birthday, and his his Mars is the 29 degrees Mars is right here. And it's very interesting because this 24th degree of Leo is the ninth degree of the Sibley, the ninth house degree of the Sibley chart. And what I've found is that this is called a large camel is seen crossing a vast and forbidding desert, or self-reliance. This whole concept of American nationalism and keeping the America, isolating America. That's the beliefs in the Sibley charts of the ninth house, is really America first. And what you see here is there's Saturn and Neptune is seeding this new cycle, right? These are the three cycles converging again, because what you have is Jupiter over here in Cancer. It's a new sign, and it's in the 11th house. And this is a legislative house in mundane astrology. And what it's doing is it's squaring both. It's this opening square of the Neptune cycle and the Saturn cycle. So it's really about like, what new foreign partnerships are we going to dissolve, and what are we going to start? And that's what I'm reading into the symbolism. And then there's probably going to be this growth in tribalism and this legislative push toward America first, as we already know. There's something else that could completely happen during this time. I'm not a psychic, so I don't know. I'm just reading the symbolism. And based on what's happening now, I see that it's going toward. But if you see the nodes, very interesting, from the closing cycle in his previous election, it's on the opposite end. So before, the North Node was pointing to Virgo, now it's pointing to Pisces. And I'm curious about what is going to happen during that time. And I want to read the Sabian symbols of this Cancer and Cancer and Aries degrees. One degree Cancer is a man on a magic carpet hovers over a large area of land. It's expanding our perceptions of what is and what could be, seeing the bigger picture. So, okay, so maybe we're adjusting what it is that we are capable of during this time. And the 1 degrees Aries is a comedian reveals human nature, adjustment to feedback, being able to see ourselves from another point of view. And so there's this reconfiguring of society's, really, the expectations of what's possible. And maybe there's coming around to this new vision and this new partnership with different allies. But 22 Pisces is very interesting because it's a materializing medium giving a seance, and it's noticing how people suffer and live in confusion. And it's about, it's also further explained in the new age, there are many hopeful people yearning for a new way forward and ready to grasp at straws, believing in absurdities and trusting their untested intuition to an unrealistic degree. So for me, there are people that are coming around to seeing this new vision that's very nationalistic and isolating, but also this kind of delusion about where it's going to bring us into the future. So that's one possibility of how this is happening. Now, you can read these symbols in multiple ways, and I don't want to leave kind of a fatalistic point of view here, because we could also have, Jupiter in Cancer is also a very great and benefic place for Jupiter to be. And so it might be that, we're expanding our, our nurturing of, who we think should be nurtured and who we think shouldn't be nurtured. And maybe that extends out to the political environment. Is like, hey, wait, you guys can't benefit and not care about your, the people that live in this community. You need to start also stepping up and giving some of the share and ownership of all of the riches that you have, because all of the financial people, even the financial people, I don't know if you know, there's this guy that Ray Dalio, I was following until he came out with a very interesting cycle analysis until Kamala was chosen. And then he was like, we've got to
Oh,
look
Ray
out.
Merriman. You're thinking of Ray Merriman.
Not him.
Oh, okay.
Ray Dalio is business. He's not an astrologer. He's a
Oh,
business.
okay. Sorry.
And back when he has a lot of investments in China, and so he was much more interested in, and he's afraid of China becoming the next superpower, because he saw very clearly the inequity that was happening. And so I think he was trying to make the case that we really need to think about how the inequity is growing in America and how that causes revolutions. But at the same time, he made a case for going against Kamala because it wasn't in accordance to Wall Street. And so he made this big announcement. And at that time, I was like, no, okay, I'm not going to follow this person. But a lot of financial people did. They went to Trump because it benefits them, even though it's exacerbating the core problems that Americans are, experiencing. Because can you imagine with this, take out regulations and take out people forcing, people to do things, the benevolence of a libertarian, are they going to actually give more to the people? Probably not. I don't know. I like to be a little bit more hopeful, but I'll definitely keep an open mind about it. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see really what plays out.
Absolutely. Wow, so interesting. So much to digest. And
I
I
know.
think I think that there is a lot of a lot coming our way. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting to see how these Jupiter and Saturn cycles play out.
Yeah.
I know that people have not been talking much about the Jupiter-Saturn square right now. We heard a lot about the conjunction in 2020, but there hasn't been as much about this Jupiter and Saturn square. So, so I appreciate you bringing this forward and kind
Well,
of.
thank you for letting me learn about this, because putting together presentations like this really help you learn, just like analyzing your own cycles really helps you understand your astrology a lot better. And that's kind of one of the things that I do with people. I kind of give them homework, because it's really hard not to analyze these cycles to really understand what's happening repetitively in your life. And then that helps you understand how to transcend and to put the cycles to work for you rather than against you.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So, any other final pieces? Do you want to stop sharing so I can
Yes.
just chat with you? Is there any other final things takeaways that you'd want people to know? How can they use this in their own charts?
Yeah, I think it's very helpful for you to, when you're looking at, especially like if you're looking at a difficult transit coming up, you're having your Saturn return, there's all these big milestones that happen in your life, like the midlife transits, really reviewing it from the past, like, the conjunction, opening square, and all of those things really inform you about the cycle upcoming. So even from a very rudimentary level, if you can understand the timing of those events and look back in your life about what has happened before, it really helps you understand what's coming next. That's been very helpful for me, but also like this whole understanding what's happening in the world around me and connecting it to my chart has been really helpful. Like understanding the political environment, how is it impacting me? Because it's very much in my family, this fight. And I know there's a lot of people who've had these fights in their own families, and they've been isolated from each other and in conflict. And where do we move beyond the polarities so that we can start having conversations? Because the political leaders use these cycles against us, and do we really want the political environment to inform our relationships with each other?
Yeah, I think when Jupiter goes into Cancer, it's not all roses, but I do think that there is opportunities even within our own homes and of healing
Yeah,
those rifts. And I think even if it's one-sided, even if we have to do the hard work of forgiveness, that's really a Jupiter and Cancer thing, is really kind of opening your heart, and it's
yeah,
going to be an opportunity there, and that's going to start this summer. So, and I'll have more, I'm going to do a whole video on that later, a little closer to that cycle. But also, I was doing some research on Jupiter and Cancer, and that's when the internment camps in World War II were happening. So, like there is a
always two
nationalism.
sides, right?
Right.
There's
There's
always
always a
two
high road
sides.
and a low road. So that's why it's hard in astrology to predict the future, because we don't know if people are going to choose the higher path, or if we're going to be, stuck in a rut on the lower path. There is always an opportunity for us to grow and to learn and to have a fulfilling experience in this lifetime.
Yeah,
And that's collective as well as individual, but it's hard work. It takes consciousness. And so
yeah,
a lot of times we see these kind of more shadowy negative influences pop up so we can get the lesson. So, but that is how astrology can inform us, and that is how the cosmos is always trying to teach us something, and there is a reason and a season for it all. And so we know that we are being supported by something. We just can't say exactly how the story ends just yet. So,
exactly.
but I appreciate all that your hard work that you put into this, Suzanne. And
I really
and
appreciate you, Dabney. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate
absolutely.
it.
And she does have some really great midlife transits. So if you are in midlife, like I am, check out her channel, because she's got several of these. And also, if you want to learn astrology, I think that's what Suzanne does, is like she's much more technical than I am. And so that's, kind of nice. You can see like, oh wow, this is such a broad topic, and there's so many different ways that you can go, and just helps give you a different flavor of astrology. So
Yeah.
thanks again.
All right.
You have a lovely, lovely week. Bye,
Bye.
Stargazers.